Welcome to Fresh Tech Tips. I am Darrell Norris, CEO of Fresh Tech Solutionz. I have a couple of my business partners here with me today.
Hello, Darrell. I'm Nicholas and Bezor Daniel, CEO of Aegis Project Management, LLC.
And I'm Dr. Doug Franklin, CEO and co-founder of Deck Launch, LLC. Happy Memorial Day, guys, and happy Memorial Day to all of those soldiers who gave the ultimate price in serving our country.
Definitely. Yeah. So today's Fresh Tech Tip topic is cooking up capital. So today we're going to be talking about cooking. We're cooking up capital. So today we're going to be talking about what you need to get capital, the types of capital, and what we think the future of raising capital is going to look like, or what we hope that's going to look like anyway. So Nick, can you start us off with one of those famous, wonderful definitions of yours?
Yeah, man. So capital is money or wealth that's needed to produce goods or services for your business. It has to be used to acquire assets or maintain business operations. So it differentiates it from money. Money is just money. It only becomes capital when you use it for either growing your business or maintaining business operations.
And so let's talk about actually, Doug, can we touch on let's break down this capital more for the ordinary person. Let's get like a layman's term definition.
So capital is pretty fundamental. So what do you need to make the things that you want to sell or share with the greater community? All of you have all these great ideas as entrepreneurs, but it costs money for you to generate your ideas, whether it be for you to build out an app, which we love. We definitely love apps here. Or if you're trying to build out your service, if you're trying to build out a restaurant, if you're trying to build a tangible product, all of those things require money. We continue to say it takes money to make money in our in the world with regard to everything that we do. And capital is that money.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you need to do to get capital. Nick, let's kind of run through some of those things.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Doug's gonna want to fire up on all of these because these are right up our alley at Deck Launch. But proof of concept, minimum viable product, your team, your revenue model, your business track record. If you're already working and you want to kind of get a cash infusion, capital infusion, you have to show people, okay, I've been in business, I've been doing this, and traction. There's agreements, partnerships. Or shown in this social media age, showing that I have a following that I can leverage to generate revenue.
Yeah, so one of the cool things we actually have today is an example of one of the businesses that we are partnered with right now. So there's an awesome guy by the name of Tim Fields, and him and his team have started BESN, which is going to be the Black Esports Network, and it should be rolling out at the end of this month, beginning of next month. And so we had the opportunity to work with them literally from this ideation phase where they had the idea and they happened to come to us, and we worked with them with one of their investors from beginning to end over the last 2 months. And so let's break down everything that they pretty much need. So they had a good idea and a proof of concept already. So they came into the door with a proof of concept. They shared a rough version of the pitch deck with us, which was a really cool concept. A lot of things that really where they had competitive advantages over media that's currently in the market, and we were really excited about it. But the thing is that what they needed from their investor is some of the hardware to build out the minimum viable product. And so it was interesting because they needed capital for the MVP. So what did they have to do? We worked with them to make sure that they built the correct team. We make sure that we helped them to build the revenue model and gave them some strategic recommendations. And then they did this on their own, which was really cool because they couldn't necessarily prove the revenue model by doing a lot of the programming they wanted to do because they don't have the hardware quite yet. But they went out with the concept and sold the idea to a whole bunch of different organizations. And so they ended up getting in-kind partnerships for products and financial partnerships with so many organizations just off of the idea alone. And so what is that? That's traction. So they had almost everything outside of a business track record, which helps. And that was the big thing, was trying to continue to prove did you have the right things. The funniest part of this is that they had everything, and their investor initially was like, I don't necessarily get it. I don't understand the proof of concept. And it's because he's not necessarily a gamer per se, like maybe I am or people of my generation. And it just so happened that investor had a business trip to the city that Tim lives in, got to see what they do, fell in love because it put everything all together. And so as long as you have as much of this perfect storm, or basically all of these pieces to the pie, that gives you a better opportunity to be able to get as much money as possible for capital, especially working capital.
Yeah, and definitely, I want to continue touching on that topic because that proof of concept is so important. That minimum viable product, that MVP, is so important. And everybody has their own kind of viewpoints of what an MVP actually means. So for us, we typically kind of look at it as, like a clickable prototype or something that's kind of not working, but it's not fully functional. But we was talking earlier, this can mean so much more. This doesn't actually have to be an actual clickable product or a product. Like, your traction can vouch for as an MVP in some cases. Doug, you want to touch on that, or kind of where we were going with that MVP?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes the minimum viable product is just being able to show somebody kind of what it looks like. And you can do that in multiple ways. So when we were in pre-production, we were kind of talking about the concept of what does a clickable prototype look like for a lot of businesses. One of the businesses that we've been talking about a lot during the pandemic are restaurants. And so what happens if you don't have a storefront that you can go to, that you can open, or if you didn't have a storefront to begin with, but you have a gift. And so you see a lot of really cool businesses. One of the businesses that I think of is Cafe Mary J, that's opening up pretty soon, where what they did is they just cooked on Instagram, and that was it. And so in doing that, they had the opportunity to be able to show that they had a really delicious looking product that everybody should be eating. And that was the opportunity. That's the opportunity that you can have with MVPs. So if you have an app idea, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to have an app. It just means that you need to have screenshots. If you have a service idea, you may not have the full business, but maybe you've worked with some of your friends that could give you a referral and explain some of the outcomes. So there's a bunch of ways to be able to show, prove and validate what you're doing, and they don't necessarily need to be these super formal things. Like, we do love when our app developers come, when people who are potential app owners come with the need to either make a clickable prototype or a revenue generating MVP. But there's so many other ways that you can prove it to be able to get capital.
Yeah, and what we're going to see a common theme in all these once we get into the types of capital, and as the discussion evolves, you're going to see that exchange, that ecosystem is always the same. You bring you want capital from somebody or some people, and you bring something in exchange to give them confidence for them to give you that capital. And the forms just change, but that relationship does not change. And then you pay them back something after it, of course. You reward their investment.
And Nick, since we're kind of on that, can you talk about the difference between capital and money?
Yeah, so I touched on that a little bit earlier, and I think a lot of people, once they hear capital, they hear money, and capital is money, it's assets, and at the end of the day, it is money, but money is not always capital. So the differentiation comes from its purpose, and what are you using it for? So capital is earmarked for growth. So when it's capital, I need money to start my business, or I need money to take my business from level 1 to level 2. Or I need money to keep operations going for a certain amount of time. It's like really, really, really distinct purpose for your capital. Now, I guess an argument could be made, Doug, and let me just hear what you have to say about this, like a potential, and there's a category we can talk about, like money sitting in the bank. I guess you can say it's capital, but it's not really because you're not using it yet, but it's kind of just potential. It's just there. You could use it to do A or B or C, but it doesn't become capital until it's purposed for either growing your business, establishing it, expanding, or something like that.
Yeah, so often what generally happens when you talk about working capital, and kind of how we even build it out, is we consider working capital the just in case money sometimes, and that's what people often think about when they're trying to get a really quick start. Is they will actually say, well, working capital is the money that we need just in case we need a little bit of a safety net. And so, just like Nick said, yeah, it might just sit there. But one of the things that you should probably be able to do, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're going out to get capital and you know you need for sure $125,000, but you probably gonna ask for $10, $15, $25, $50,000 of working capital. You need to be able to articulate what happens if it's sitting there, if you don't need to use it, because you should be able to articulate to investors, okay, well, what is this working capital probably going to be used for? Well, if it's for operations, if it's for, we have a bad month and we're going to pay for rent, that's one thing. But what happens if you don't have to pay for rent? You need to be able to tell them how that money is going to make money, because the amount of money that it's going to your working capital makes sitting in the bank is probably not going to hit the 3x, 5x, 7x, 10x that your investors are expecting after 3 to 5 years. So you really have to make sure that you know exactly what all of your capital is supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And so one thing that a wise man once told me is that the best time to get working capital is when you don't need it.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people out there who wait too late. If you're at a time when you can acquire that capital, do it now. So I want to get that off my chest while it was burning a little bit. But let's get on to these types of capital. There's a lot of different types of capital out there. There's debt capital, there's equity capital, there's working capital, unconventional capital, community capital. There's all these different types of capital. So let's kind of start out with this debt capital. Nick, let's get into this debt capital.
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
Debt capital is probably what a lot of people are used to. As it was these are probably we put under the category of conventional capital. So you exchange debt for the money that you need to grow your business. Either you do it through conventional means, like going through a bank or government resource, or you go to a lender, a hard money lender, and you make an agreement. Hey, you give me this certain amount of money, I'll be indebted to you, and I'll pay you back with certain amount of interest.
Yeah, and also when you talk about debt capital, you cannot forget credit. So for a lot of businesses, that have a lot more of the social economical resources, it's really easy to be able to get the things that you need for debt capital from banks. But if you look at some other sections of the entrepreneurial community that may not necessarily have a lot of the social resources, if you see where I'm going with it, a lot of times the bank is not necessarily an option. And so there's also the conceptualization of being able to use credit cards. So a lot of times in your debt capital also is included credit cards, personal and business, regardless of how high interest they may be. And I think if we're going to talk about prioritization of capital, we'll probably talk about a whole other show and another rabbit hole to jump into.
Yeah, we'll come back to those things, but I think you pretty much hit it on the head. And I like that you said that because, and I know Rose is going to talk about this a little bit. When we're talking about capital here, we want everybody to feel like they can get access to capital. Because I know a lot of times when people, that's something that hampers them from doing things. Is like, okay, I can't use the bank, or I can't qualify for this loan or whatnot, and you feel like you have no recourse. And we're hoping that that's not the case when we discuss all these different options.
Yeah, and to Nick's point, I think about 6 out of 10 people who are part of groups, social psychological groups that have not historically received a lot of assistance, they don't even try to sign up. And so there are opportunities, and that's what we're hoping to be able to show you as we go through to the close of this show. Is there are opportunities. We just got to help you find them.
Yes, and I can't really not touch on this subject. I didn't really want to get too much into it, but credit, your personal credit is important. Right. It is important because there's a lot of things that we don't have access to because of our credit, and I'm speaking as people like me, and
I'm there.
and I mean, even the other day I got we got a denial letter for disaster funding because of a personal credit issue. So I mean, it's serious, and we do need to get past this. And one thing, and one person I want to shout out is Monsi, because her company Fig Restoration is an excellent credit repair option. So I think that's something that you need to get situated, regardless of what stage of life you're in or what stage of your entrepreneur journey is in. That's going to be important. So I just want to touch on that. Just a quick little plug for
that's a great
my
point,
girl,
man.
Monsi.
It's like money in the bank. It's like having money in the bank, like that value. Like at any point you can get access to what. So we're about to move on to the next one, but people should realize that when a lot of people are doing business on the upper echelon, a lot of times they're doing business without even touching any actual real money. Like they're using it based on this is my credit, this is my track record, and this is what I can do, and then they get money based on that. So since our personal credit is the one thing we have before we can get to that level, it becomes actually pretty vital.
Definitely. So let's talk about some of the other types of equity. Of capital. Let's talk about some equity capital. So Doug, let's talk about this equity capital. This is a touchy subject for a lot of people.
So equity capital is a really cool thing to me. I'm fascinated by equity capital because we're talking about, do you trust me? This is like 100% do you trust me? Debt capital is like, I don't trust you, but here's some money, and then you gotta pay.
Right?
Equity capital is like, I trust you to flip this thing, and please do it, because ultimately with equity capital, if someone give you some money and you say you're going to flip it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come back. And so and that is what you're talking about. You guys, because literally right now, everybody is freaking out for their lives with what the stock market has done for a lot of the investments that they had. And they're scrambling. And this is literally what we're talking about here with equity. But equity is such a cool thing because what you're looking at is literally a tug of war between sometimes the owner of the business and the potential investors. The best example that we have ever had in Declaunch history of our long 2 years, 1.5 years of existence actually is one of our first clients that received a $1.5 million offer. It did not like the fact that that offer asked him for 51% of the business, even if they wanted to sell. And it was interesting because this client did not want, or the investor didn't want full ownership of the business, but they wanted to be able to make sure they controlled it until this business could prove that they could hold their own. And the wild thing is that the founder said no. But that's the thing, is like, when you talk about equity, now you're getting into a place where you're talking about the difference between, what your mind says logically and what your heart says emotionally. And you have to be very careful with those two things as an entrepreneur with your business.
Yeah, in the equity scenario, you're usually exchanging a portion of ownership, or we call them shares, for either financial consideration, or you're using it to attract talent, or you're buying for some kind of service. You're pretty much exchanging. You're using your shares of your company as what you're leveraging to get whatever it is that you need for that capital that you need.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're often asked, which is really difficult, is how much equity should I give up? It depends, man. We really can't tell you the right answer for that. And what we hope is that you're able to keep the majority of your business, but if you start at zero and someone offers you $3 million or $5 million, where it's an insurmountably large number that you weren't going to be able to raise on your own, then there's some soul searching that you have to do, and those are the most difficult places for us to be able to consult, because we don't know, to be completely honest. It's because you're still talking about something that's based on your potential, and the question we always ask you is, well, could you raise this on your own? And that leaves people on a completely different place. But one of the things that I really do appreciate that Nick hit on is the talent piece. One of the things that I didn't touch on quite so much at the beginning of the podcast, when we said you need team to get capital. Sometimes you use your capital to get team. And so if you don't have a strong financial officer, or someone who can get you into the supply chain, or a programmer or a developer, or you're going to have to use some of your equity, possibly included with money, to be able to get yourself to the next level. And so even though your equity is really, really valuable, you also need to know the opportunities that come with utilizing your equity to be able to bring your business to the next level.
Yeah, man, I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Let's get into a couple of more types. I know we touched on working capital a little bit. Nick, did you want to deep dive a little bit more into working capital?
Yeah, I just want people to understand, and Doug's probably great about this. So your working capital, like we said, is your day-to-day capital. It just measures your short-term liquidity. And I think before this, he was talking about cash is king. I know our mentor, he could just do hours on this, but short-term liquidity. A lot of businesses right now, you've seen a lot of businesses that are closing right now, they're going out. This is what they don't have. They have some assets, they have investments, they have everything, but they don't have money in the bank. They don't have short-term liquidity. That's when I say liquidity, we mean actual cash, money that you can use to keep operations. So some of the businesses who have been hanging on for a certain amount of time, some people have been able to forecast and say, okay, our money, we can keep paying people until so date. They can calculate that based on how much money they have in the bank. So at any point in time, whatever you do have, whatever funds you do have to keep operations going, that is your working capital. And then, one more thing is, it's how you calculate it. People are wondering is just pretty much what you have, your current assets, what you have versus what you owe, or how much money is coming in inventory minus how much you have to pay out. Is a simple mathematics for you to get that done.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple of unconventional capital that I want to discuss, mainly community capital. So there's a lot of different communities that's been doing community capital for years and years and years and decades and centuries. So Nick, let's kind of touch on. Go ahead, Doug.
So before we get to the cool ones, let's make sure that we don't miss some of the smaller ways, the micro investments and things of that nature.
Right.
So I think we all
about that.
Yeah. So one of the ways that is starting to gain popularity are micro investments, like basically friends and family investments. So think crowdfunding, but just with your people in your community, and so the benefit of this is you're talking to people that trust you. The shortcoming of this has been is that a lot of times people who run friends and family investments often forget that their friends and family are investors. So you can't, even though you're working with people that you trust, it doesn't necessarily mean that you get an extra 2 to 3 years to pay them back. It just means that you're working with the people that are closest to you that may have the resources. So you have to make sure that you take care of that. We also have pre-sales. So we talked about the concept of restaurateurs, right? So if you're pre-selling this really cool product you put on Instagram, then you're able to build up assets for what's coming. That's the whole concept with Kickstarter as well. You see a really cool product, they make one prototype, they take pictures of it, and then you buy with the intention of getting it when it comes out. And then also sponsorships. So if you have like a service-based product, or maybe your product is complementary to something else, you can always work with companies that would be interested in investing with you, or put money aside in kind because they see the marketing opportunity. So now you have these really cool partnerships that may not pay out money at the beginning, but bring you traction that we talked about earlier in the show. And the reason why we had to talk about some of these smaller concepts is that Nick has some really cool bigger concepts that we believe are the future of capital. So go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I'm glad that you went back and touched on those, because again, like we see, elements of what we've talked about on these conventional ones are still the same thing that there are in these unconventional ones, because the main fact is because the unconventional sources came first. Before you had banks and you had loans, people were already exchanging trust for capital to do one thing or another since the beginning of time. And the first one I'm going to talk about is from my tribe, the Igbos in Nigeria. You guys don't laugh at the name. Imuahia. That means learn the market and trade. So in Nigeria, I'll give a little bit of backstory, and I see a lot of similarities with that, and a lot of like the black and African people who are here in the U.S. Back then, after the Civil War, the Igbo tribe, we lost the war and whatnot. So there was a lot of poverty, like incredible poverty. So they need to find a way to really just pull everybody up. And it was kind of like the whole community needed to rise. So they needed a way to generate wealth for everybody, because one person couldn't be rich. So what they did was they created a system where there were requirements built in. So when they exchanged talent and time of service for capital for you to raise your own business. So, and you see that all across the Igbo culture. It's called Igbo apprenticeship capital. If you guys want to look it up, watching on Facebook and see more about it. And one of the places where it's most prevalent is in one of the biggest electronic markets in the world. It's actually in Lagos. It was about 10,000 merchants. I was watching a TED Talk on this. 10,000 merchants, and they turn over $4.5 billion every year. So, and these are people who they get no government fund. There's no regulation to help them. And when it went time to find the source, how did you guys grow? I mean, what happened here is that one person makes it, they get a few apprentices under them. They serve them for a few years doing like pretty much running their business, which again, I just point to this MVP. So those 2 or 3 years of you serving, you closing deals, you running that business shows whoever is investing in you, which in this case is going to be your boss or your master, who your apprenticeship is under. So that's your MVP. That's your minimum viable product. Shows give them confidence they can invest in you, and at the end of that, they set you up with 2 or 3 years of rent with your own shop, give you a cash infusion to start trading on your own, and then you do that for people under you. And that domino effect starts going, and before you know it, a community can actually just kind of grow. And in that situation, people recognize that it's not about the one person making, because a lot of times something that stifles that is competition. People are like, oh, what about competition? It's like, now there's so much money for everybody to share. If we have a bigger market ecosystem, there's more money, more revenue for everybody. So that's what that concept is about.
Yeah, and so the thing that is really, really cool about what Nick said, the thing that continues to just kind of resound in my head is that there is money in community, and there's money in community advocacy. And often we think that when we are advocating and working for and with our community, that there is not necessarily a positive implications. It's always like treated like community service where you're putting in time and all you're going to get is goodwill. No, that's not the case. There is financial value for everybody in helping to build the communities, particularly your communities, if they are the communities that need it the most, the marginalized communities. You need to be there, and that is one of the things that we found that's really powerful. So I would like to take a quick heads up to just talk about some of the cool things that we've seen. So, like for example, we have Mr. Philip Dunn with his project where they're literally trying to look at where money is going within communities of color. Like and with To the Table, that is just an amazing concept, because now you can see where the flow is, which also allows you to be able to make strategic decisions based on what's going on. We have another Philip with Mr. Philip Yates. We got all kinds of Phillips apparently. But Equal Liberty is really cool because as Darrell talked about earlier, we're worried. Everybody's always worried about credit, right? And well, what happens if you have a great idea but you have terrible credit? Like my credit's probably shot because I've been in school for my entire adult life, right? But there's opportunities in showing that you can improve your credit by the work that you do, how much you're paying off professionally and personally, who you work with. Do you have coaches, mentors? Are you working with businesses within your community to build it? That's what Equal Liberty is all about. I suggest that you go and check out their website. It's really cool. There's also Crowd Stakes, which is much earlier stage, where they're just trying to get people to do to raise friends and family funds, but be accountable for it. Aaron Sampson is probably freaking out if he's watching right now. But there's a whole bunch of cool concepts of taking this community concept that Nick is talking about and actually using it. And there's organizations that have been doing this to begin with, your chambers of commerce, so many other social organizations, shout out to Urban Capital Network as well. Like, people are trying to get there. You guys just got to believe in it. That's really what it is.
Right. And Ron, I would love for you to bring it home as far as, because you mentioned a few things there with mentorship. A word kept ringing in my mind was intellectual capital. And I kind of want you to talk about how that helped you with the growth of Fresh Tech. But before I toss it to you, I just kind of want to bring this point home about underserved. How your community stops being underserved and starts being listened to is through that group generation of wealth. Like, so if you look at a lot of stuff I know here in Houston, the Asian community, they have their own space carved out. They have their own systems. They're listened to is because it's not just by chance. It's because systematically, when an Asian family actually immigrates here to the U.S., the people who are already here, they come together and they pull money and resources together and knowledge to set them up, get their business going. And then that Asian family does it for the next one and does it for the next one. Before you know it, you have a whole big system of wealth generation, which then buys you power to have streets named the way you want to have your own section, have political capital and all that stuff. So this stuff that community piece is very, very important, and it's probably more important than your individual wealth, because at the end of the day, if you're just one person who's wealthy, your reach and your power is not as great as when you have a community of people who are similar to you. And then, Rob, can you tell us about how intellectual capital definitely helped the growth of Fresh Tech? Because I think that's important.
Well, it's very important, and the growth of Fresh Tech has been crazy, and how we've evolved, and that the knowledge that we pick up, it continues to just grow and grow and grow and grow. So I mean, there's a lot I can get into about that, and we have about 30 seconds left. So that might need to be a whole entire another episode, and I would love to jump on that. So I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope everybody learned a little bit of something today, and thank you for joining us as we cooked up some capital for you guys. And happy Memorial Day. We will be back next Monday at 12 o'clock noon on Facebook Live. Come back and see us. Thanks for joining. Fresh Tech Tips.
Thanks, y'all.